4.5. What's up, sons? It's Blind Rod with Son of a Tech once again, and today we have a review for the AMD Ryzen 7 5800 X3D CPU. We picked the CPU up because it is very unique in the cache configuration, as well as the total amount of cache being 96 megabytes. So we wanted to test it out in the different algorithms available for CPU mineable coins. In particular, we have 5 we're taking a look at. Stay tuned till the end of the video for an interesting one that may hint at something maybe a little bit more profitable. Let's get into it right after a word from today's sponsor. Today's sponsor is Crypto.com. Crypto.com is my go-to centralized exchange for liquidating my crypto assets. With their Crypto.com Visa debit card, I can load up my mined Ethereum to pay for power and other operating costs quickly while earning up to 8% cash back. In addition to the Visa debit card, there are additional fiat options, including wire transfers, to easily receive your profits. Crypto.com also offers additional services, including trading and even staking, to earn additional revenue on your investments. Join 10 million plus users buying and selling 100 plus cryptocurrencies at true cost by using my affiliate link in the description for a $25 funding bonus. Or enter referral code SOAT at sign up for the same bonus. Remember, cryptocurrency investment comes with significant risks, so do your own research. Welcome back. Let's go over the specifications first. So taking a look at this processor, you have an 8-core 16-thread processor with a base clock of 3.4 gigahertz and a boost clock of 4.5 gigahertz. An important note about these speeds is that there is no overclocking capability on the 5800 X3D, and that's because the cache requires a set amount of voltage, and they wanted to meet that TDP of 105 watts. It has 96 megabytes of L3 cache, which is the most on a desktop lineup CPU ever in history. It is a socket AM4, so it will work on basically the old AM4 platforms. You can just get a BIOS update like we did with the ASRock Taichi B550 motherboard, and you will only need one socket, and it supports Linux, Windows, and all that goodness there. The max operating temperature is 90 degrees Celsius, and in this particular case, we utilized a Noctua NHD15 for testing. The memory that we have in here is going to be the G.Skill Trident Z Neo, clocked at 3600 megahertz, and that is going to be basically 32 megabytes total, and we ran 2 sticks, so 16 gigabytes a piece, and the XMP profile applied with no issues, and we ended up with some pretty good scores in Cinebench, so we basically went ahead and said, okay, this is good. If we take a look at the Cinebench score, in case you're curious, it does come out with a 14,673 points in R23. If we take a look at CPU-Z, we can see it in comparison to the 5950X, where it has a 91% of the 5950X on the single thread, while a 975% on the multi-thread versus the 1837% on the multi-thread of the 5950X. So not quite as good as the 5950X in particular, but this is kind of a benchmark that isn't indicative of everyday performance. As you guys might have seen with this particular processor, is that it is kind of slated as the best gaming CPU currently available, and it looks to do very well, especially at its price point. But we're really not that interested in that. We're interested in the mining performance. So it has a 105 watt TDP with everything plugged into the motherboard and plugged up to the power supply. We ran it through a kilowatt to kind of get total system power. Keep in mind there is an RTX 3050 on board, not a super power heavy GPU, but it is being utilized to obviously run the 4K monitor and that sort of thing. So take that into account. Total, while we were doing all of the tests, the highest we saw was 187 watts and the lowest we saw was around 180 watts. And that will fluctuate, you know, depending on the algorithm and so on. It fluctuates a lot more with something like Raptorium than some of the other algorithms. Now, Once we went ahead and plugged that in just for worst case scenario and got everything configured to start testing, we started things off with Monero. And we did all this live on my Twitch channel at twitch.tv/blindrun. So if you ever want to check out anything I'm working on live or watch me play video games, you can definitely head on over there. And during the testing, we found that it was 9,668 hash a second at 180 watts. We'll get into profitability in just a second. Let's get all the numbers though. Next, we had to do Raptorium. Well, really what we ended up doing with Raptorium was running it for 24 hours on a mining pool to get the accurate numbers. As you might know, basically Raptorium rolls through a bunch of different algorithms, meaning getting an average can be quite difficult. You need to run for basically at least 24 hours for a valid test and get the average hash rate from the pool, because even if you get it from the miner, that's not even that accurate. So this one in particular is a lot more hard to test, but we did go ahead and get it going, and we ended up with 3.8 kilohash a second, or 3,800 hash a second, which is pretty good. That lines us up with the previous kind of king of the Raptorium mining crowd, the 3900X. So the cache is definitely helping out here in Raptorium. Once again, that's at 180 watts, and we'll get into profitability here in a second. Like I said, it's on par with that 3900 XT and 3900X. Pretty awesome as far as that goes. We are seeing the cache basically do something. We didn't really see it do anything with Monero. So we also checked Veriscoin. Now, if you're not familiar with Veriscoin, it's basically going to be a fork of Komodo. However, it does change its algorithm to VerisHash, which is very interesting. And VerisHash can be run on mobile phones as well. It's not as cache dependent. So the hash rate here is not going to compete with something like a 5950X or, a 3900X in particular. It ends up coming out to 22 mega hash a second, which is respectable though at 180 watts. We also checked out Haven, because Haven's been something that a lot of people have been talking about recently. And that came out to 1234 hash a second at 180 watts. Not too shabby. And then Darrow, this one's really interesting because Darrow just recently updated their algorithm to a V2. It does require essentially that you get the new Darrow specific miner from their GitHub. I'll leave a link down to it below because it ends up being really, really curious. It ends up with 0.075 mega hash a second, which is what we had to do in the calculator. However, if we're taking a look at it from the other perspective, that's going to be around 75 to 80 kilohash a second. Once it's a little kind of dialed in, it does look like I end up with about 80 kilohash a second if we're not live streaming, which was putting more of a load on that particular system, even though it was going through a HDMI cable to a capture card. Because we were messing around on the system, it didn't really keep that full 80 going. It would drop down to 75. We went ahead and went with 75 for the calculator. Profitability on this is curious, and I'm not positive it is completely accurate, even though MinerStat has updated its algorithm to Astro BWT v2, which is the particular algorithm for Darrow. It looks like a lot of the pools are having trouble right now as it sits. Miner Rocks, for example, won't show your hash rate on Miner Rocks. Their recommendation from, of course, the developers of Darrow is that you set up your own node and mine directly to that. There is a ton of hash rate in comparison onto it, and you may see why when we get into profitability. And speaking of profitability, let's get into it. CPU mining has become less and less profitable ever since we've had those pesky mining YouTubers talk about the profitability of CPU mining as it pertains to Raptorium, which was kind of the savior for the CPU mining for a while, and that has fallen off. Profitability on Monero, if we take a look though, is going to be basically about 8.5 cents a day after 6 cents a kilowatt hour. Now I calculate this in because I'm looking for my particular farm. If we go up to 10 cents a kilowatt hour though, and calculate that out, you may want to be a little careful because all of a sudden you're losing money. CPU mining in general right now is losing money on almost every single algorithm. This is very important to pay attention to because you don't want to get caught with a bunch of CPUs if you're paying over 10 cents a kilowatt hour, essentially at this point. So what else do we have? We have Raptorium. Now this does end up a little bit more profitable. After power at 6 cents a kilowatt hour, it's at 17 cents a day. However, if we go up to 10 cents a kilowatt hour and calculate that out, we end up with a fraction of a penny, a tenth of a penny essentially. And you know, it's not that profitable once again. We did have it pulled up here for the 3900 XT, and as you can see, it's around the same hash rate. Now, Coin, if we take a look at that for profitability, at 22 mega hash a second at 180 watts, it's at 15 cents a day after 6 cents a kilowatt hour. Of course, once we calculate that out to the 10 cents a kilowatt hour, we are once again basically making no money. We're paying people to mine it. If we take a look at Haven Coin, it does perform quite well thanks to the additional cash, allowing it to mine on every single core. This puts it at 1234 hash a second. And you end up for 24 hours making almost 8 cents a day at 6 cents a kilowatt hour. But once you calculate that 10 cents a kilowatt hour in, again, you are in the negative. But there may be a savior. There may be a savior here for CPU mining, except I'm about to talk about it. Hopefully you've waited till the end of the video, and not everybody does, and this video will probably maybe only get a few thousand views. But there is essentially a new algorithm for a coin that's been around for a while called Darrow. In fact, the Bitcoin talk thread had not had the last page updated for over a year until about 22 days ago when they announced the launch of the new algorithm, the launch of the new miner, and essentially a new protocol for mining pools. When they did this, they ended up basically increasing profitability a ton. Now, at first, MinerStat didn't have any profitability for it at all because you did not have the latest algorithm, except now they've updated it, but I'm not positive that the actual profitability is accurate. If it is accurate, which I'm working on testing, I will make a video for you guys later because this was kind of a last minute thrown in thanks to a Twitter user, a Twitter viewer, a viewer that tweeted me and said, you got to check it out. So I went ahead and got the new miner, the Darrow miner, and got it up and running. And we ended up with 75 kilohash a second, which comes out to, after you go ahead and convert it to megahash a second, 0.075 megahash a second. At 6 cents a kilowatt hour, this thing is saying, this calculator is saying that's $8 US a day. Now, this may not be true. And so we need to verify it. What I can tell you is it's 75 to 80 kilohash a second. What I can tell you is that it uses 180 watts on the total platform. Those are the things I can state as a fact. I have not set up the node yet at this time. I've mined actually to a pool that had updated, but the API wasn't working. And I haven't run it for more than about now at this point, maybe an hour. So I don't have any payouts yet either. So what I am going to do is get basically a node set up here on our servers as a virtual machine, get to mining with some of the other CPUs that we have out at the farm, and actually verify that this is true. If this is true, this could be pretty massive. It sounds like too much. It sounds too good to be true. Hopefully it is though. So there you go, guys. Basically, we have all the hash rates for you guys for the 5800X3D. In closing, for this particular CPU, it is looking very competitive to basically what the 3900X was previously on those cache-intensive algorithms. However, what we are seeing thanks to the 5800X3D is a bunch of users upgrading from the 3900X to, of course, the 5800X3D, which means that we are starting to see very cheap prices for the 3900X on places like Facebook Marketplace, eBay, Craigslist, etc. You would be more advised as a miner from a mining perspective to purchase these used 3900Xs, as you can get them for about $300 a pop, and in some cases even as low as $250 a pop, as gamers are upgrading to the 5800X 3D. But in the future, if you start seeing the 5800X 3D come down in price competitively with the 3900X, I would probably pick it up over the 3900X, as it also has lower power consumption. That sums up my opinions and thoughts on the hash rates for the 5800X 3D. I hope you enjoyed this video. Be sure to hit the like, comment, and subscribe down below, and share this video out with the population of crypto miners, and I will see you next Tuesday. If you enjoyed this content, be sure to hit the subscribe button for more, or check out this playlist for more crypto content related topics.